Welcome to ADHD Whiskey. My name is Matt. Today is 1 Ounce Wednesday. On 1 Ounce Wednesday, I take a blind sample out of this box behind me. I pour it into a glass. No idea what it is. Could literally be anything. But it's probably whiskey. With that sample, I nose it and swirl it and taste it and evaluate it, do my little dance, say my little jokes, and at the end of the video, I give it a score and we reveal today's pour. So without further ado, let's take a blind sample, pour it in a glass, and see how I do. See how it do. Whew. Got one. America. Hiding it. Where can... Don't know where that went, but we'll find it later. Giving this glass a bit of an SJ, a bit of a swirl job. Taking it for a trip around town. Taking this whiskey on the circle tour. Creating a whiskey whirlpool in my tiny right hand. Orbiting, orbiting, orbiting. All right, let's go in for a nose on this 1 Ounce Wednesday. Corn forward. It's not quite Australian red licorice, which is my favorite red licorice because it's the best red licorice, but it's more of like a red vine. Typically, a red licorice that isn't Australian red licorice is just off the table. But in a pinch, a red vine, I suppose, will do. If you're into red licorice that tastes like a shoe. Like the sole of a shoe that stepped on Australian red licorice. Anyway, that's enough about shoes. Let's get back to basics. If this is a bourbon, it seems to be in the younger range of bourbon, possibly a wheated bourbon, because there is a tiny little bit of like maybe a dairiness to it, like a little bit of kefir, like a strawberry kefir. Although that note isn't presenting itself like fully nude, but like partially nude, where you're like, is that dairy? Is that dairy? Because I can almost see a teat. A little bit of strawberry, tad bit of dairy, pretty grain forward, not a ton of oak on here. I'm gonna put this whiskey between like 4 and 6 years old. 1 Ounce Wednesday down the hatch. A lot of strawberry cream is coming out on the palate. It's like bright with fruit, but not extra bright that makes you think it's a super young whiskey. It's like still super creamy and delicate and oily. It's coating the mouth remarkably well. However, first sip of whiskey for the day. And if you get caught up in first sip-itis, you'll be saying things that you don't mean later when you reveal the pour. Because first sip of whiskey for the day is just gonna make you happy no matter what it is. Unless of course it's shit. In which case, why did you do that to yourself? Setting yourself up for failure, are we? Feel like maybe some youth characteristics are coming through here. I'm still gonna stick around the 4 to 6 year old range on this bourbon. If it is a bourbon, it is creamy and oily. It's got a nice finish. It doesn't have a ton of aged, dark oaky, or like dark fruit, or like Rick House characteristics that turn this into like a super high quality special occasion sipping whiskey. I would consider this whiskey more of an everyday sipper than like a special occasion, extra awesome, complex. What's the word for being really fancy? A word that's very fancy. Son of a bitch. It's like a... I should call a friend and find out if they know. Who would know a word that means fancy?
Oh, there's a face and voice I haven't heard or seen in a while. What are you up to, buddy?
Trey, what's up, dude?
You know, just rolling around, sweating my ass off in Sacramento.
So I'm in the middle of shooting a video and I was trying to think of a word. And I was like, who would know a word for fancy that I'm trying to think of? And I was like, Trey would know.
So the synonym for fancy.
It starts with an S. So something. Sophisticated. Oh, you didn't help at all.
You know, I did because you called me. I thought you were thinking like snazzy, spiffy, smiky. I thought you were thinking of more of a colorful word.
Oh.
That wasn't
Yeah, no,
My train of thought was not in sophisticated.
I would have got snazzy. That's why I called you, but I pictured you and then sophisticated came to mind, so perfect.
I love you, Matt.
Trey is one of the most sophisticated people I know, and I'm glad I called him so I could think of it, because this whiskey is not as sophisticated as Trey Wade from Blue Run. It's not. But it still smells and tastes good. And for that reason alone, I give this sample a blind score of 7.4. It fell all the way back in the box. I got it. Today, we were drinking on 1 Ounce Wednesday. Kentucky Owl St. Patrick's Day edition 2021 from Bill Kavanaugh, a 100 proof offering, Kentucky Owl St. Patrick's Day edition. I believe, and don't quote me on this unless of course I'm correct, that this is a bourbon whiskey that was blended by an Irish master blender, possibly. Would have been a great sample to pull out around St. Patrick's Day, but that's not the life we live around here. The life we live around here is pure chaos and nonsense. So with that being said, that's the end of 1 Ounce Wednesday. Thank you for watching. My name is Matt. This is ADHD Whiskey. Hit the thumbs up if you haven't. Hit subscribe if you're not subscribed. A lot of you jerks aren't subscribing and it hurts my feelings. And if you hurt a fat guy's feelings too bad, then it will result in a helicopter having to remove him from a house after they tear your roof off. And I rent this place and I don't want to have to pay for a roof and a helicopter. So be nice and hit subscribe. Like I always say, keep your head in the clouds but your mind on not being afraid to call people when you don't know an answer. Is it the answer to what 2 lines mean on a pregnancy test? Maybe for you. Is it how much stevia to substitute for sugar in your chocolate chip cookie recipe? Possibly. Not me, I use the real stuff. Is it just trying to think of a word that you can't think of? Sometimes that's the case. And when that's the case, you can't be afraid to call a Trey Wade.